Hey everybody, and welcome to a very special video. Of course, we are at the end of 2021, and that means that a lot of people, including myself, are making their lists of top 10 or top 5 best games that they played this year. Now, I know that for the past 2 months or so, I haven't really been uploading a lot to the channel. I've been busy with other channels. If you saw some videos on the Kanoa channel, you know that my long play channel, The Game Archivist, which you can find the link to in the description down below, absolutely blew up and actually got monetized, so I actually focused on that for the moment. But starting in January, of course, I will be sure to do a lot more reviews again for the Kanoa Reviews channel as well. We have a lot of cool games coming up in 2022, and I'll be sure to cover many of those. When looking back at 2021, I think I did around 40 or so reviews, so I hope next year to do a little bit more there, a little bit more variety as well. But all in all, I would say that 2021 has been a bit of a mediocre gaming year. I do have to say that there is a few games out there that I haven't played that could very well be on the list. I have not played Metroid Dread, I have not played Far Cry 6, Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite. I mostly stuck to PC, even though Forza, of course, well, actually, most of the games I just mentioned are also on PC. But I kind of stayed away from some of the AAA games that felt kind of the same, because from footage that I saw with Far Cry 6, it wasn't really my choice in what they did there. But so if you are wondering, like, oh, why is this game not in my top 10, that is probably because I have not played it. But then again, as I said, I think it is a pretty mediocre year, even to the point where my top 10, probably numbers 10 to 5 or something, aren't necessarily must-plays. They're simply just fun or fine. But I remember, for example, in 2013, that was one of the best gaming years we've had, where in the same year we had The Last of Us 1, Bioshock Infinite, and GTA 5. I mean, talk about some AAA blockbusters that raised the bar on a graphic or open world or story level. You know, that was an amazing year, and I can't really remember in recent years that we had a year that was that good. Anyway, without further ado, let's actually get to the list, and then at the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit more about how I look back at the year and what, you know, more of my plans of coming year. So, we begin my top 10 on number 10 with Jurassic World Evolution 2. Now, starting off right at the bat, I do have to say that this is not actually that amazing of a game. In some ways, to me, it actually felt more like an expansion, and in a way did not really justify the price of $60, since a lot of the animations or skins were the same as the previous game. There were some very welcome additions, including a better campaign, though the campaign still was very short and in some ways lackluster, but they had some better build-up, some more fun missions in between here and there, and overall it did not feel as grindy as it did with the first game. You know, that kind of felt soulless. I still have to say that Jurassic World Evolution is very basic with your options on customizing the park, especially compared to the other game made by the same creators, Planet Zoo, because you can customize in incredible detail there, and that is simply not the case here because it's an existing franchise or IP that it's based upon. On number 9, we have the game The Shore. Now, if you have not heard about this game, but you do like Lovecraftian horror or Lovecraftian lore, please go and check out this game. It's very cheap, especially on sale on Steam right now. This game was recommended to me by my good friend Greg, and I had never heard about it. I had not seen any trailers or screenshots, and so this game actually gave me an experience I haven't had in a very long time, and that is a complete blind playthrough. Usually with trailers nowadays, a lot of it is spoiled, and it made me realize what a waste it is, because back in the day, trailers really didn't reveal much. You know, the very first Alien movie didn't have a long trailer, it just had a trailer showing the egg of the facehugger, and that was it. There was mystery there, there were things to discover, and I had that with this game. Honestly, playing this without knowing anything about it probably made the experience much better for me than maybe that the game actually deserves. It's quite a small game, it's an indie game, and the biggest critique I could have is that the voice acting is not very professional and sometimes a bit hard to hear. But it is a great game with great adventure mechanics, some great horror, and even goes way further on showcasing some pretty epic spectacles and even having some action in it. I was blown away by how much there was in this relatively small game, and I recommend anyone who's interested in Lovecraftian games to check this out. This might be one of the top 3 best Lovecraft games out there. And then on number 8 we have Escape Simulator. You might not know it, but I actually really like escape rooms or escape games. I haven't done a whole lot of them in real life, probably 3 or 4, but of course now with the pandemic you can't really do them, at least not in the country where I live, and escape room games are then the perfect next thing to experience with friends. And Escape Simulator was the game that was released this year that has a very solid premise and has puzzles and escape rooms that are very fun. I do have to say some of them are fairly small, and I played them with 3 other friends, and I do wish some of them were a bit bigger, but the custom rooms made by other people on the workshop are a lot bigger and offer some great puzzles as well. The puzzles are intuitive, get actually quite deep and quite complicated, but not to the point where it becomes frustrating. If you play this with friends, it really works on the strength of knowledge of different people, and you never really have the feeling that somebody is left out. Often you cannot do multiple actions at once, and so you will really need to divide all the work between all the players, and it's a great game where nobody is left out. Definitely try this out if you have some friends to spare to try and escape some of these rooms. And then on number 7, we have Little Nightmares 2. Little Nightmares 1 was a great little indie game that felt like a 3D Inside or Limbo, but definitely with its own style and unique feeling to it. Little Nightmares 2 ups the ante with it with a lengthier campaign and some great new enemies that are absolutely horrifying to deal with. Definitely the highlights are the long-necked schoolmistress or the weeping angels-inspired patients in the hospital that only move when you're not looking at them. Now, I will say this, though, even though bigger is always better, it doesn't really go up for games all the time. It should say that, for example, some new mechanics are introduced, including melee with things like hammers that don't work as well. But the overall increase of scale and mystery definitely has me wanting more, and is definitely still a great game to try out and get sunk into this incredible looking world that the creators have made. Number 6, and we're almost at the top 5, is the game I Am Fish. Though initially this game might look a little bit weird or cheap, or maybe even as YouTube bait, if you know that this is made by the same creators as I Am Bread, I can tell you wholeheartedly that this is not. Sure, it is a game where you control a fish in either a fishing bowl or some other container that holds water in it, and your goal is to get to the ocean. And now to do this, you need to roll around and avoid all sorts of obstacles and do wacky things. The controls are very floaty because basically you are controlling this giant orb, or sometimes also a canister or even an ice block in one instance, which is very slippery. So the game does work on that sort of like YouTube bait where you have very clunky controls, but I will have to say that it never gets as annoying or as, you know, YouTube baity as something with I Am Bread or Surgeon Simulator, or that, I forgot the name of that game where you control like a horse or a unicorn with like 4 buttons, Qbert, Quirp, something like that. This is a proper game where it has such a feel-good vibe all in all. The music's great, the graphics are great, it has this cool like Disney vibe to it, this Finding Nemo, bright colors, easy to pick up and play. There are maybe a few levels, maybe 1 or 2, that get a bit difficult to the point where it's like, okay, I have to do this over and over again, but it never got to the point where I got frustrated and it felt really like that trial and error gameplay, like with games like Super Meat Boy or I Am Bread or that sort of stuff. This, in my opinion, is probably these creators' best game yet, and I cannot wait to see what more DLC or new expansions they will introduce for more I Am Fish. And then we have arrived at the top 5, and at number 5 we have Hitman 3, which came out very early this year and might be forgotten on people's radar. Now, I'm a very big Hitman fan. In fact, I would say that Hitman's gameplay is perfect, and I don't see how they could improve it more without adding things that feel convoluted or forced. And all I want from Hitman is just with each new generation of console, a new game with bigger levels, more ways to kill enemies, etc., and new exotic locations. Hitman 3 in that regard is, I think, the weakest of the 3, because the highlights are always the levels and how they feel like and what you can do. And I would say that the Dubai or Abu Dhabi level in the beginning is cool, and then also the mansion is pretty interesting, though it does not feel as epic. I would definitely say that Hitman 2 from the more recent trilogy is the best one, with having some amazing levels like Miami, India, Colombia. There's just a lot of levels that are very epic in terms of scope, and Hitman 3 in that regard felt a bit smaller. Like the Hong Kong level isn't actually that good. It's fairly small, dark. A lot of sections are in this like research facility that feel very James Bond, and Hitman to me is more that stealth, going up into the crowd at places where a lot of NPCs are. Hitman 1 had that great thing with the party in Paris, but of course the highlight everybody agrees on is I think it's called Sapienza, that Italian beach village, which is just a great atmosphere, and there's a lot of things to do there. And Hitman 3 in that regard is a bit weaker, but still it is very solid and very fun, and I think a great ending to the trilogy. And they have, of course, already announced that they will do a few more levels for Hitman 3, so I cannot wait to see what is in store for us. Number 4 is a game called Land of War: The Beginning. This is actually a game that was recommended by viewer Lion24, and I had no idea this existed, and it proves that if you look around on Steam long enough, you will find some really good gems between all the hentai or Among Us garbage or clones that you can find on there. You need to wade through a lot of crap to get to the golden nuggets. But Land of War: The Beginning, in my opinion, is something like that. Now, I will have to say this. Gameplay-wise, this will not blow anyone away. In fact, it is quite standard. It has your basic Call of Duty, and I'm talking about Call of Duty from like 2002 through 2003 in style, where you are playing a single-player campaign with NPCs, friendly NPCs at your side, doing all sorts of things like attacking houses or factories, holding trench lines, having turret sections on motorcycles, etc. Pretty basic stuff. But the cool thing about this is that this tells the story of World War II from the Polish perspective at the beginning of the war, meaning we see weapons, armor, and tech that usually we haven't seen in any other single-player World War II game. And the reason why this is so high, despite that the gameplay is quite basic, and it's also a pretty small, like, indie game, so it doesn't actually look all that good. The voice acting is pretty hit or miss. But the reason why it's so high for me personally is because I really want to push more people to make products like this. Call of Duty Vanguard this year was an abomination of a game. I absolutely was disgusted by that game. It felt so soulless, and in the sense how AAA creators sell us things like, we want to tell the untold stories of World War II, the stories and the battles no one talks about, and then give us this crap about like I guess it's not Call of Duty Vanguard, but with Battlefield 5, about, you know, we want to show the battle in Norway where pretty gigantic battles were fought, and then we have this stupid campaign of this skiing little girl and her mother and the heavy water thing, and it's like, what are you doing? Where are the epic battles? And Call of Duty Vanguard is the exact same thing. Instead of focusing on gigantic battles, they want to make sure, okay, we have that woke agenda, you have the female sniper, we have I mean, they're based on actual people. I think Arthur is his name, like the black American soldier. I think he was a runner in the actual war, doing some pretty heroic stuff, showcasing none of that. Just making sure that, okay, we can do a pretty woke and mainstream story for the mainstream and keep it at that. Not actually going into you know, some actual battles, showing the war as it was. And in a sense, Land of War: The Beginning does do that. The characters might not be as unique or like, you know, memorable as some other characters in other games, but again, you are playing as regular soldiers, and that is what I want from my World War II games. I hate this thing where people are trying to make games like the characters from Inglourious Basterds or Wolfenstein or whatever. Show me the war in a more realistic way, where I'm just one of thousands of soldiers doing my duty and, you know, hiding in the mud, screaming for my mother as machine gun bullets rain down around me. You know, that's the experience I want. And Land of War: The Beginning, in that sense, is still far away, or far shot away from that, but at least it is a step in the right direction, and I hope to see more games like this. I would love to see, for example, a single-player campaign about the Italian World War II campaign, or more focused on Africa, or some other campaigns or scenarios that are not that well known, but are pretty still epic in terms of scale. And then we arrive at the top 3, and pretty much all of these 3 games are must-plays in my opinion, and you might be surprised to find that on number 3 we have Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. I finally popped my Five Nights at Freddy's cherry with this game, which finally introduced real-time first-person adventure gameplay in the FNAF universe. Five Nights at Freddy's has actually been the most requested game on the main Konoha channel back in the day, and I always felt I missed the boat, but the gameplay that came with it also wasn't really my thing. In that sense, Security Breach really was what I wanted. I love first-person games that are in real time, but also more of the adventure aspect and horror aspect, you know, rather than just focusing on cheap jump scares or these, like, you know, flash-created images, these 2D images. Everything was beautifully rendered in 3D, and yes, I will say this, because even though it's on the top 3, I will admit that the game runs like absolute crap. It stutters the entire time. I've had some bugs, but nevertheless, I was very entertained all the way through, and actually still want to go back in there because there's so much to discover, so many secrets, so many things to collect. It is absolutely great to run and walk through that world. Everything is so colorful. The level design is amazing. The art design is just out of this world, to the point where I think it actually deserves a prize. But it feels like home when I walk through that area, and I really feel like I know all the areas, and I know that there's cut content and that the creators will make some more content and DLC in the coming year, and I cannot wait to return to the Megaplex in order to see what there's new to discover. Now, of course, I am pretty biased because this is the game that actually blew up on my channel, The Game Archivist, and made it to where that channel could be monetized. But since then, I have gone and played some other Five Nights at Freddy games, including Help Wanted, but also the fan game Final Nights 4. And in that sense, Security Breach is a great way to be introduced and pulled in that world of Five Nights at Freddy's, and then have you expand by playing some of the older games and getting used to that more limited type of gameplay, whereas Security Breach lets you free all out. I've heard some people say that Security Breach is not that scary or that difficult, but the difficulty thing is actually very good in my opinion. Yes, there are some issues with the AI where you are clearly standing next to it and it should be able to see you and it doesn't, but I will actually say and admit that I find Security Breach better than a game like Alien Isolation, which is highly praised and I think is a little bit overrated. The problem with Alien Isolation, even though it's fun, is that it's very long and you're very often only being chased by the same type of enemy, meaning it actually gets pretty boring. It also gets to the point where, though there are some items you can use to stall the alien, it's usually a thing where it's very difficult to run away from the alien, and once it catches you, you are set all the way back. Now that's also the case with Security Breach, but it is much easier to avoid getting caught, meaning it doesn't turn in that frustrating thing where you have chase sequences and it really becomes a game of trial and error with so many horror games where the monster that is chasing you catches you with too much ease. All in all, I can really say that Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is a great game, not only for those fans of the older games, but also those who weren't fans before because they thought that the gameplay was pretty limited. This game finally pulls the Five Nights at Freddy's world to the next level with a proper first-person adventure horror game, and I would recommend anyone to go and check it out. Now, at number 2, we find the game that I actually initially thought would take the number 1 spot, which is Resident Evil Village. This game was my most anticipated game of the year and did not disappoint. The harmony of different types of gameplay was great, and the build-up was also perfect. In the beginning, I was a little bit afraid that this game would lean a little bit too much towards action, and though the second half is definitely more action-packed, I was so happy to find out that they still kept to those roots of slow build-up and the horror. It has a very quiet, slow build-up in the beginning, and also has some great horror moments, including both in the Dimitrescu castle, but also, of course, in the house with the puppets and the weird ooze baby. Of course, a highlight that should always be mentioned is Lady Dimitrescu. A great babe that absolutely was on everybody's mind, but I was also kind of astounded how quickly everybody forgot about her again. In fact, on a lot of lists, I did not see Resident Evil Village on number 1, despite so many people absolutely being mesmerized about this game initially when it came out. I think it's because, and I do have to agree with this, that after the House Beneviento, the puppet house, it does take a little bit of a dip in quality. And even with that house, the issue is that when you replay it, the scares and the puzzles do not change, and so it becomes a little bit repetitive to play that again. In that sense, the Castle Dimitrescu level is the best one because it represents that old school Resident Evil feeling so much with the puzzles and the vibe of being in a mansion, and of course the types of enemies as well, and also being chased by, of course, Lady D and her mommy milkers. I will also say that I am actually quite glad that they didn't have Lady Dimitrescu as the main bad guy, but only as one of 4. Initially with the marketing, it definitely showed or seemed that she would be the main bad guy, and I think Capcom did a very smart thing with the marketing to focus on her, because you saw how thirsty everyone was for her. But I am glad that they kept to their original vision of just having her in a small part of the game, because otherwise it could feel very cheap. It could feel very cheap, like a cheap gimmick to pull in the horny gamers, and they didn't. She's just a part of one of 4 generals, and by chance, because how she looked, the internet took her by storm and embraced her. Now, of course, I would love to, if they don't have DLC with her, but knowing that Capcom probably would love money, I think the chances are very highly that they will make a Lady Dimitrescu DLC, maybe a prequel or something, or I hope they won't bring her back to life because she is so popular. Star Wars did that with something like Boba Fett, where Boba Fett clearly died when he initially was shown in Return of the Jedi, and then he was so popular that they said, oh, well, you know what, he has a jetpack, he can fly out of the Sarlacc pit. I hope they don't do this with Lady Dimitrescu, but I'm afraid they probably will. Props also to Maggie Robertson for an absolutely astounding performance. She won the Performance Award at the Game Awards this year, and it was more than deserved. She did absolutely fantastic. It's a great game. Not solid all the way through, but still so fun. I have completed it 3 times now, and still just thinking and talking about it makes me want to go back in and relive this horrifying adventure all over again. And then we come to number 1, people, and this was a complete surprise to me, and I do have to say that I'm going to cheat a little bit here, because on number 1, we have Final Fantasy XIV, a game that technically came out in 2010, I think, then had a redo a few years later. But the reason why I'm cheating a little bit is because, or why I can use this, is because this year, of course, the Endwalker expansion came out. Now, even though the Endwalker expansion was from this year, I will give this position to the entire Final Fantasy XIV experience, because I only started playing it this year when Blizzard released the patch, I think 8.1 or whatever, 0.1 for the Shadowlands expansion, and it was a horrible patch, and they showcased that they were taking the story in a direction I did not want it going. I already said in my review that if they go for the Sylvanas redemption route, I will stop playing, and that is exactly what I did. Ironically, too, that was a week before that whole shitstorm happened with Blizzard of all the sexual harassment allegations, and so that was a very weird timing, but at that same time, I switched over to Final Fantasy XIV with that whole hype, and though initially with the main vanilla game, I wasn't really sure what the big deal was. Ever since Heavensward, I got sucked in and stuck in the story, the memorable and lovable characters, and just the ever increase in better gameplay, better dungeons, better story, better cinematics, better characters, etc., with each expansion. It is absolutely amazing. Not every expansion improves on all aspects, but with Endwalker, this game came to an amazing conclusion. And, in the first month that I played this, or first 2 months, I played this game, I think, for 250 hours, which I play a lot of games, but playing a game that much in such a short time is very special, even for me. So, Final Fantasy XIV absolutely deserved it. It was an amazing experience. I definitely don't think it is the best story when it comes to games in general. I think games like BioShock Infinite, Metal Gear Solid, Yakuza, Final Fantasy IX have better stories, but when it comes to stories in MMORPGs, this is definitely the king of them all. And to top that all off, the gameplay is very fun with amazing dungeons. People don't talk enough about the dungeon gameplay in Final Fantasy XIV, which is just absolutely excellent. Alright guys, and that was it. That was my list. Something of a special list, I would say, if I compare it to other games. But like I said, I have not really played a lot of mainstream or AAA games this year. You know, haven't played Horizon, haven't played Halo. I don't know. I didn't really feel like it. Like, for example, I hear a lot of good things about Halo Infinite. The footage that I see, I'm like, it kind of looks okay-ish to me. I don't know. I'll probably play it, and probably it'll feel very good once I play it, and but we'll see about that. I also am currently playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake released for the PC, which I also absolutely love, and I was actually thinking of giving it a place on this top 10 as well, but technically that is of course a game that was released last year, so I was like, nah, I'm not actually going to do it. Anyway guys, this video has been going on for long enough. Like I said, was a bit lacking with this channel for the past few weeks, but was busy with the other one. I promise now that that is monetized, I can focus more on, you know, all my 3 channels and dividing all the attention there. I will take a little bit of a break right now. I do that every year, and probably be back in the 2nd week or so of January. I don't know yet what review I will do. I do want to go back also into Star Citizen, because that of course has been updated 4 times since my last review, and that is actually my best review on the channel, and want to see if it actually is now worth playing as well. As always, if you want to recommend or suggest a game for me to review on the channel, let me know in the description down below. I wish you all a very, very happy new year. 2021 for me has been a pretty okay year. Now with this like final thing, like in the final 2 weeks with the game archivist blowing up, it actually has changed it to a great year, and I've been very, very happy here now. But other than that, it's been okay. I feel like it's been a little bit better than 2020. But all in all, I cannot really complain. Things have been just going steady forward, and you know, we'll see what 2022 will bring. You know, let's all hope that it will become a good year, and things will become a bit more free. And like I said, I'll hope to do a few more reviews, and hope that we'll have a great game year together. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next year.